Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Roberto. I'm a staff engineer back at Dojo. I've been with Dojo for about 3 years, and one of my main passions at Dojo has always been to focus on how to highlight and bring the awareness about reliability to teams. And for us, we always felt that observability was one of the main drivers, vehicles for that. So we've been focused on that for about the last 2 or 3 years. With that, we partnered with Grafana for about 3 years back, and we want to support this journey. And today I'm going to talk to you about all the steps we took forward with our journey, where we are, and hopefully it's going to be insightful for you folks. So a bit about the agenda, just going to talk very briefly about our business to give you some context. And there's pretty much kind of 2 stages on our observability journey. So there's one first stage about how we got to monitoring, then monitoring over to observability. Then we'll talk a bit also about what's coming forward on our agenda, kind of like the roadmap. So about our business, making every second count. So we're pretty much a payments provider in the UK. We sell this great product, which is a card terminal to small and enterprise customers in the UK. We're also expanding internationally into Spain and also into Ireland. We have an app that also can do a lot of transaction management and insights. The full system supports point-to-point encryption, a lot of EPOS integration. It's unique, it's fast, it's simple, secure, pretty much that. Over the last 3 years, so some statistics, our product is pretty much 50% faster than the average on the industry. We've inserted ourselves into more than 150,000 small and enterprise customers in the UK, and we've integrated with more than 450 EPOS partners so far. So as you can see, this has been a big scale for us in the last 3 years. We couldn't have not done this with any observability in mind, right? It was key for our success. So we start with the first part of the journey, which is everything to do with monitoring. And this was, with no doubt for us, the roller coaster experience. There are a lot of up and downs that Will has already talked about also before. So for some context, our workload force runtime estate is pretty much 70% around .NET. The other 30% is Golang. So we felt at the very early start, we should focus in the .NET workloads, right? So when we started, there was pretty much nothing about metrics. Every alerting was done on logs. There was a lot of alert fatigue. There was no maturity model whatsoever, right? There's no center of excellence around the Dojo. These alerts were firing, there was no any accountability whatsoever, and there was no platform tribe like Will explained previously. So it was a bit hard. When we started the first time, it was simple. So let's grab a service from .NET, let's get it instrumented with metrics, let's run it with some load. We grabbed K6 out of it, and what we wanted to show to the first internal customers was pretty much, look, did you know that your service is not fit for scale? So remember, this was 3 years back, right? We came up with this very simple dashboard to show them some statistics about the metrics and what was happening with the service. So for a team of engineers that haven't never seen this, only focused on logs, and start to see like a black dashboard with panels with some stats, they found this interesting to start showing them the problems they could have in terms of the service would not scale beyond that, right? So this was the very early start. We knew at that time we wanted to focus pretty much on metrics. So there was 4 pillars for us. There was instrumentation, and we know we needed to build some libraries around it, get it instrumented, get it available for everyone. And we focused only on .NET. We didn't go into the Golang world yet at this point. Then we knew we need to ship that telemetry to our cloud provider of choice. And we also wanted to build some basic dashboards for the team to use, some basic system that people could pretty much put their alerts on. And we also knew in the future we could use the same focus on metrics to adopt it for different use cases that could solve other different problems, such as auto-scaling, canary deployments, and we knew we're big fans of CNCF products. We knew we could go out and adopt in the future CNCF products that could focus simply on metrics. And that's what we did. So over just a period of like 3 months at a time, we got over 50 workloads. Workloads for us are like pretty much deployments in Kubernetes world. And we got over 50 workloads instrumented with metrics, using some basic dashboards, and started to set up some alerts. That's cool. And also, by this time, I think this is a really good number. We already had over 30 dashboards created by teams. But how did we get there? So we didn't have a central team. There was a lot of initiatives around inner sourcing, nearly like outsourcing, but inside the company, right? So this were pools of experts and champions within their teams that could collaborate on building a central .NET library with instrumentation. We spent a lot of time on documentation, of course. Simple documentation, long pages of documentation was worthless. People would simply not read, right? So sometimes just filming a small video of 1 or 2 minutes helps a lot with the documentation and spreading that around on the org. I won't lie, there was a lot of hand-holding. What do I mean by this? We did need to work a lot with teams in raising PRs for them on their behalf. How to instrument services. That did happen at the beginning to get the show on the road. And we did internal tech talks also to bring the awareness and also promote some influence for the teams to understand if you adopt this, this is all the benefits you get. You get all these insights you've never seen. Everything you have is just based on logs. That's not enough. So we did even further. As people started to adopt, we started bringing up these nice, flashy architecture diagrams with flowcharts and Grafana and putting them on the office screens. So it's obvious. Anyone that goes through the office screen would stop, stare at it. It's like, I don't know what it is, but I definitely want that. So this is how we start getting people to actually care about Grafana, care about metrics, and starting planting the seed within Dojo. But now, of course, story was too good, right? We start getting some challenges. The first one was Golang, Python, etc. Those other teams using different runtimes started to demand metrics also for those runtimes. So a bit difficult because we already have a tight inner source. It starts to get really complicated. There starts to be interest in tracing. So people not only metrics want to go a little bit beyond that. Okay, cool. And we didn't have a structured process to deploy agents to collect our telemetry, right? It was pretty much custom resources in Kubernetes, take them out, deploy them, that's it. No cost control. People could ship whatever metrics they would love, and so on and so forth. We didn't put strict governance around it. Dashboards were on the wild. People just create random dashboards around the company. We had loads of support requests asking for help how to build this panel, explain it a bit more in depth, with so many different type of requests. And alerts, they had no routing ownership. So people would typically go in to an alert manager file, set up a receiver, all done by hand, and even the CI wasn't robust. But of course, this was not possible because we only had maybe 4 or 5 people with expertise that could support this. For a workforce of like over 100 engineers, this is unfeasible, right? So we got to a point that we needed a platform team. And a platform tribe was spin up. And along that observability squad was created, dedicated to start taking these concerns a step forward. So we focused on multiple things, right? Let's start with the instrumentation. The first one was really, really obvious, right? We need to standardize. We talked about the semantic conventions just before on the OpenTelemetry. At this time, OpenTelemetry 2-3 years back wasn't as mature as it is nowadays. So we already felt at that time we need to standardize our metrics and also the labels that we ship. On the shipping, the same thing. We had common labels. So anything that would be shipped from a cluster, we wanted to understand that metric when it ends up in Grafana, who's the source of that metric? Which cluster does it come from? So we wanted to understand all of that and have commonality on those labels. Because if you don't do that, it's going to be difficult to build generic dashboards for teams. No more unstructured custom resources to deploy agents on clusters. We built a proper centralized Helm chart at that time. We put some governance on how to issue API keys for the agents to ship telemetry. And we started to put our own controls on alerts on Grafana itself for the costs so we could know what was going on. Same thing with dashboarding, right? Single sign-on, permissions for the teams. We invested a lot of time in creating those generic dashboards. That was super valuable even until today. We have like the most used dashboard we have in the company is one called Container Health. It's pretty much everything to do with CPU usage, throttling, network requests, etc. In very low level that people still use a lot and tells them everything about how the container is operating inside Kubernetes ecosystem. And also for the payment side of the business, we wanted to build a high availability dual site. So we not only run on GCP Cloud, but we run Grafana also in Azure for redundancy in case of one of the clouds goes down. And we wanted to standardize data sources. This seems so simple, but people hate to go to Grafana, hit the Explore tab, and then suddenly see a list of data sources that they don't understand, right? We had lower environments and production environments pretty much being served from the same Grafana UI. So we wanted to standardize even the data source names to make it simple for teams to use. On the alerting aspect, we also did the same thing. So we started we pretty much adopted the Spotify model for domains and systems that would pretty much establish who's the owner for any metric that would be around on the system. And based on ownership on metrics, we can easily route that to our on-call notification system and also start producing dashboards with that same ownership. We also at the beginning, with a lot of advice from our SREs, we didn't want to focus on alerting based on causes. So we adopted Sloth. Sloth is pretty popular around SLI, SLO alerting. So we adopted that at the very start as well. And we didn't want to add too much support for Slack alerts, right? Slack alerts is just a lot of distraction for teams, and there's no accountability. Those two main reasons threw us off to not focus too much on Slack for alerts. So this was a lot, but there was one common piece that was instrumental for us until today on this journey, which was to do with ownership. That Spotify model about domains and systems, and every single metric shipped has a domain and system tagged to it as labels, is what allowed us to understand, okay, I can build a generic dashboard that teams go for a domain in the system, know exactly the metrics that they have, right? The alerting, the same thing. People don't need to go to Alert Manager and specify receivers. Just based on domains and systems, we had now an automated process based on that, so it routes it to the correct ownership. Because typically, a domain and system for a deployment doesn't change, but the team ownership can change. That can actually change anytime. A simple case of that could be a reorg inside a company, right? So that's how we kind of did it. The ownership was really, really key until today. So by this time, we had a pretty good monitoring coverage. This is the simple, very high-level architecture, just a simple container, exposing metrics in Prometheus format, the agent collecting it, sending it over to Grafana, right? And from Grafana, on this case nowadays with Mimir, alerts get triggered, sent to Alert Manager, which you can route to your notification system. So by this time, and sorry, there's a small glitch on the slide, but by this time we already had some instrumentation also on Golang. So we had 175 instrumented workloads. We already had 45 clusters deployed with agents and shipping metrics, and over 75 users actually using Grafana on an active monthly basis. And by this time, already 500 alerts set up, right? So by this time, we felt, okay, we have a good monitoring coverage. But this wasn't enough, right? We wanted to go the step further. This had to do with now the real journey into observability. Everything to do with correlation, how to troubleshoot faster. That is now what we really wanted, right? So far, everything has been based on metrics. Alerting is in metrics. Troubleshooting with dashboards, everything is still based in metrics. We had that consistency also with standards in place. Those standards and the ownership still played a key role. But now, if we want enhanced troubleshooting, we need to invest in the other pillars of observability. We need to go into traces, into logs, and correlate all of these three. That was really key for us. So we already had some teams shipping traces to Jaeger, but this was a self-hosted Jaeger. It wasn't that scalable. We really had problems. We couldn't actually sample all the traces. And we had logs because most of our workloads do run on GCP. And people would have now different tools. Had Grafana for metrics, Jaeger for traces, logs they go to GKE Stackdriver logs, right? We wanted everything consolidated in a single pane of glass. That could be Grafana, right? It would be more cost effective, and we can also control very easily the more retention periods. And also, one thing in Jaeger, for example, at that time, we didn't have support for regex when you search for some tags and even for just simple service names. That's something that we felt, well, Grafana Tempo and Grafana Loki seemed a natural fit for this, so why not? We'll give it a shot. And the other big advantage for us is this would be fully cloud agnostic. There's no vendor lock-in with Tempo and Loki. So it made sense for us, right? So once we've done this, cool, we have traces, we have logs, but the great thing we could do that started getting engineers really excited is correlating traces to logs. So as you can see on the screen, you can go to a simple span, click on that, you get to the logs. And remember, because there's so different maturity levels on teams in the business, for some teams that are still to stick to logs, they like to see this view, right? Have the distributed trace and be able to go to logs very quickly. What about the other way around? the teams that really, really love logs, if you show them logs, get them back to traces, that's even better, right? So at this point, now it's getting really the interest of the company. You're starting to correlate stuff. You can find things by correlating two different pillars of observability. But this was still not enough. There's one last piece missing, right? What about the metrics? Can I correlate metrics? Can I do a full drill down from metrics to traces to logs? And then yes, you can. So examples was the solution for us. We call that internally the dots. And examples are nothing more, nothing less than simple sample information of traces on your Prometheus metrics. And with that, it gave us the drill down capability. It could very easily surface relevant issues for teams. And the troubleshooting experience is so quick. So from an alert, you have a link to a dashboard. That dashboard, you have an exemplar. From the exemplar, you go into a trace, you go into a log. And you can go all the way reverse as well. So this is what it looks like. This is simply a panel on a dashboard that for non-200 response codes for an HTTP server, right? And what you see there is the typical requests per second on non-200 response codes, right? The dots you see at the top, those are the ones that are examples, or in this case, exemplars, are samples of potential trace IDs related to those errors and to that path and to that method, right? From here, you can go to traces, you can go all the way back to logs, right? So this speeded us a lot in our troubleshooting journey, made things so simple. The other thing was, this is all great, but our primary focus still with Grafana, or the Grafana stack, is still the focus on alerts, on alerting. No one wants to keep staring at dashboards the whole day. Oh, that is pretty obvious nowadays, right? But we had some growth pains. So at the beginning, we focused too much on promoting symptom-based alerts. So the typical multi-window, multi-burn rate strategy from Google SRE book, well, really well known. We had some problems with that. So it's a great system, great methodology to alert on, but it does require some teams to be really high on their maturity. If you look at Sloth, for example, it has so many convoluted recording rules. For teams to debug that when they have an incident, we had a lot of problems with that. It took them a long time to understand it. So it does require some high maturity teams to be able to follow symptom-based alerts. We had a lot of alert redundancy, so people having any random alerts, copy-pasting them around, and just wasting their time. Just want to use the same type of alerts, but there's a lot of copy-paste. And the typical cognitive load friction. So engineers are so focused on their daily features that they need to work on and deliver. No one's up to be a PromQL expert whatsoever, right? So that was a problem for us in terms of how do we find easier ways to promote alerting, and we want engineering teams to be focused on that in terms of our observability offering. So we came up with a simple templating system about global alerts. I'm not going to go into technical details here. But global alerts are nothing more than like a simple template, for example, for CPU. Your container is being CPU throttled, right? It's a simple alert. You create one template. What we would do that is replicate that same alert for all the domains and systems in Dojo, because that is what tagged the ownership, right? So teams automatically get out of the box alerts for these, which they can turn off, and we do encourage them to turn them off after they start on their journey to focus and elevate the maturity to focus on symptom-based alerts. But this brought us multiple things, right? When you're in a platform tribe and you have the observability squad, you'll typically have more squads on the same tribe, right? With this system, it allowed us to put in also a framework for other platform products. Let's say we have a build and processor team, right? And they offer Argo CD installations as a product, right? If that team wants to ship that product and automatically get alerts out of it, you could use this system automatically to empower those teams to ship their products and features and have some alerts on it, right? So we build all of those, like probe failures, crash loops, the typical Kubernetes failures that you would expect, right? We don't want hundreds of alerts on those. That is not the point. The point is raising the awareness to teams that they should start thinking about observability, right? This will cause alert fatigue. It's normal. And the intent is that get them interested to buy in time on their sprints to focus on symptom-based alerts, which is a bit harder to grasp, but way more valuable for the business, right? Where are we today? So pretty much we were already shipping all the metrics to Grafana, to Mimer, traces to Tempo, and logs to Loki as well. We use a standard Grafana agent that is provided by Grafana as well. We went from 175 to over 400 workloads inside Dojo that are shipping, that are instrumenting with .NET and Golang, over 80 agents on multiple different clusters, and also across different clouds. We have over 200 active users across engineering, ops, and also product. And believe me, sometimes to get product people to get the buy-in for Grafana is not that easy, right? It's a too technical tool. And with global alerts empowering this, with all this SLI, SLO alerting, and some custom alerts that people have built, they have gotten better with PromQL and some interest as well, we've scaled that to about 11 times. That is a lot, right, that we've achieved. So what is next for us? Pretty much we want to go into the fourth pillar. We want to look into profiling. And obviously we looked into some use cases with Pyroscope. We had a couple of memory leaks that Pyroscope has actually helped us in understanding where metrics, traces, and logs weren't enough. We want to probably potentially invest more time on Pyroscope for the future. Also, we want to continue leveraging Grafana as a central piece to empower FinOps practices in the company. Right? We already have all the metrics for it. How about we get some leverage open cost as well and start raising cost awareness, get it driven by alerts, but we want responsible actions out of it to stop with waste happening on our workforce. And that's pretty much it. I mean, if you enjoyed the talk and you'd love to join us at Dojo to continue with this journey, you can scan the QR code or go to Dojo Careers. There's a lot of open roles available. If you want to discuss any of these details in a bit more in depth, come find me at the reception. Happy to talk. That's pretty much it. Thank you very much for your time.